Welcome, my friends. Today's summary tells one of the most thrilling stories right up to the final moment of the film, a journey to find a lost treasure worth $5 billion. But will they be able to find it safely? Let's find out. The movie begins with a young man named Nate, who is tied to a group of crates hanging out of a plane. Nate tries to save himself as some criminals attempt to kill him. He manages to escape them and climb back into the plane at the last second, but unfortunately, a car crashes into him, and he falls out of the plane. Then we flash back to 10 years earlier. We see Nate with his brother Sam as they attempt to steal from a museum in New York. Sam is amazed when he sees what is said to be the world's first map. He tells Nate that this map leads to a treasure lost hundreds of years ago, and that finding it has always been his dream. Sam tries to steal the map, but suddenly museum security shows up and arrests them. The guards take them back to the orphanage where they live and tell the nun in charge that Nate will be forgiven since he's still young, but Sam will have to be taken into custody. The nun tells Sam to go pack his things. Sam goes up to his room to pack, and Nate follows him to say goodbye. But he finds Sam trying to escape. Sam gives Nate his necklace and promises that he'll come back for him one day so they can live together. Then he disappears. We return to the present day and see Nate on his way to work, where he's a bartender. A girl walks in and orders a drink. Nate tries to start a conversation with her and tells her some history about the drink. She's intrigued, takes the drink, and goes to sit away from him. Later, Nate approaches her again and tries to talk. He uses the moment to help her light a cigarette, and without her noticing, he steals her bracelet. Then he walks away to clean tables. While he's working, a man named Sully approaches him and compliments him on how smart his pickpocketing skills are, especially how he read the girl's personality before stealing from her. Sully introduces himself and offers Nate a job, saying that if he works with him, he'll see places he's never even dreamed of. But Nate refuses, saying the bar's about to close. Sully insists this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and walks away. Suddenly, Nate realizes the bracelet has been stolen from him. In its place, he finds Sully's business card. He realizes he's been outsmarted. After finishing his shift, Nate decides to visit the address on Sully's card to get the bracelet back. He bumps into Sully's house security guard, on purpose, to steal the keys. He enters the house and finds books on ancient history and artifacts. He also finds the same map Sam once told him about, the one that supposedly leads to a lost treasure. Suddenly, Sully walks in and tells him he made him his favorite drink and figured he'd show up to get the bracelet. He says the bracelet is in the desk drawer. Nate takes it and starts asking about the map. Sully explains that the map leads to a treasure hidden by a famous ship captain named Elcano, who had to hide it after pirates attacked his ship. Sully adds that while the story may sound made up, it's actually true, and the treasure is worth around $5 billion. He shows Nate old books and documents detailing exploration missions for the treasure. Nate asks how Sully knows all this, and Sully says he used to be friends with Sam. To prove it, he shows him a photo of the two of them together, saying they worked as a team trying to find the treasure. But then, Sam suddenly disappeared, and no one knows what happened to him. Sully offers to help Nate find the treasure and maybe find Sam too. But Nate refuses, saying he doesn't trust him, and walks away. Back at home, Nate opens the old letters Sam used to send him. He's clearly emotional and misses him, so he changes his mind and goes to Sully, telling him he's in and ready to help search for the treasure. The next day, they meet, and Sully explains that the room holding the gold can only be opened with 2 keys, one that belonged to the captain, and the other to the crew. Luckily, Sully has the captain's key, but the second one is about to be sold at an auction. The plan is to steal the key from the auction building. Nate's job is to cut the power so they can get the key without running into trouble. A little later, Nate starts planning the heist and looks into Sully's background to learn who he's really working with. He finds out that Sully was once a military pilot and had been arrested for stealing from the British Museum. At that point, Nate realizes that Sully is no ordinary guy. The next day, Nate goes to Sully's house so they can head to the auction together to begin their mission of stealing the key. Nate asks Sully why he specifically chose him for the treasure hunt. Sully tells him he's impressed with his pickpocketing skills, and also because he knows a lot about history. That night, they arrive at the auction. Nate notices a woman signaling to him from a distance. Sully tells him that's Braddock, a gangster from London, and warns him to stay away from her when he sees her. Nate realizes Braddock is heading toward him, so he takes Sully's advice and walks away to start his part of the plan. Braddock approaches Sully and tells him she knows he's planning to steal the key, but she won't let him do it. It's clear they know each other and are both competing for the key. Meanwhile, Nate heads over to check out the key when a man named Santiago approaches him. Santiago explains the key was made in Barcelona during the 16th century, and that his family has been searching for it for a long time. That's why he's willing to spend millions to win the auction and take the key. Nate plays along, saying he enjoys collecting antiques and just wants to keep the key. Soon after, Nate starts his part of the plan, to sneak into the control room and cut the building's power. Braddock notices he's up to something and orders her men to follow him. Nate sneaks into the control room and looks for the electrical panel. One of Braddock's men shows up and attacks him. At the same time, the auction for the key begins, and the bidding reaches $3 million. Santiago is determined to win, because he, too, is after the treasure. Sully tries to stall and stay in the bidding until Nate can cut the power, but Nate gets caught up in a huge mess and has to escape from the guards. He jumps onto the lighting rig hanging from the ceiling to avoid them but ends up falling. The auction organizers panic and sense danger, so they shut everything down and secure the key inside a bag before it can be stolen. At that moment, Sully disguises himself as a security guard, grabs the bag with the key, and exits the building. As he gets to his car, he's surprised to see that Nate also escaped. Nate is angry that Sully left him behind. Sully shows him the key and tells him that the number one rule he needs to learn is to rely on himself, and figure out how to get out of trouble on his own. Nate takes the key but loses some trust in Sully after what happened. Sully then tells him they're heading to Barcelona, Spain, because that's where the treasure is located. The next day, they're already on their way to Barcelona. Nate starts thinking about Captain Elcano and tells Sully that the treasure might not actually be in Barcelona, but rather there's probably a hidden clue the captain left in the city. The captain's journals mention that the last place he was seen was in the Philippines, which could mean the treasure is there. Shortly after, they arrive in Barcelona, and a woman named Fraser shows up and yells at Sully for traveling without telling her. Then she turns to Nate and warns him that Sully is a very deceptive person and advises him not to trust him. She then storms off. Sully explains to Nate that Fraser is his partner in the treasure hunt and that she has the second key. Nate checks his bag to make sure the key is still there, since Fraser is a skilled thief. He finds the key still in place and runs after Fraser. She tries to get away and reaches her car before he can catch her. But Nate blocks her from driving away and tells her that Captain Elcano's journal, he's the one who hid the treasure, includes a unique symbol of a tree, and that symbol points to the location he moved toward. Fraser brushes him off and says she's not interested in anything he's talking about. At that point, Sully cuts in and tells her he won't stop her from leaving, but in the end, she won't find the treasure without the journal. Fraser reconsiders and agrees to work with them. Nate then speaks up and says that the tree symbol in the journal points to a place called St. Maria Church. After a while, they go to the church, and Sully is surprised when he realizes Nate was right, that the captain really did enter the church, and there must be something hidden inside. Fraser tells them they should come back the next day during the service, when all the nuns will be busy, so they'll be able to search for what they need without being interrupted. At the same time, Santiago arrives in Barcelona and meets with Braddock to team up in their own search for the treasure. He tells Braddock that his men spotted Sully at St. Maria Church, so she needs to keep an eye on them and get the keys. During that moment, Braddock discovers that Nate is actually Sam's brother, the same Sam who used to work with them. She then asks Sully if he told his brother what really happened, which clearly hints that Sully is hiding a secret about Sam. The next day, they head to the church. Sully tells them they need to split up to search for the spot where the keys go. As they search, Nate notices paintings on the wall that look just like the ones Sam used to send him. He finds a chest with a puzzle that could lead to the treasure, and they uncover a map drawn on the floor that leads to a sealed basement. The three of them head to the basement and find a statue of a nun. When they move it, it reveals the keyholes. Once they insert the keys, they discover a tunnel underground. Nate decides to enter the tunnel with Fraser and gives Sully one of the keys, telling him to stay behind in case anything happens. He also gives Sully an app that tracks their movements through a map so he can follow along in real time. After that, they descend into the tunnel, and Sully leaves the church to track them using the app. But unfortunately, Braddock and her men are already watching. She orders her team to follow Nate, while she personally keeps an eye on Sully. Nate and Fraser find another tunnel that leads to an underground bar. They sneak in but suspect Braddock's men are looking for them. Nate tries to distract them by starting a fire in the bar. Meanwhile, Fraser notices a strange carving on the wall and becomes curious to solve it. Suddenly, one of Braddock's men attacks Nate with a bottle. At the same time, Fraser keeps working on the carving and eventually finds a small keyhole and opens a hidden gate. She calls out to Nate to escape through it. He follows her, and they find themselves in the city's underground sewer system. Above them, there's a keyhole for the second key. Fraser inserts their key, but suddenly the entire place begins flooding, and there's no way out. Nate panics and calls Sully, telling him there must be another keyhole in the same location and that it's their only way to escape the rising water. Sully happens to be at a restaurant right above them. He finds the keyhole, but it's covered by a glass panel. He tries to break the glass, but Braddock suddenly appears and threatens him, demanding the key. Sully throws the key on the ground, then dives forward, smashes the glass, grabs the key, and inserts it into the lock just in time to save Nate and Fraser. The gate above them opens, and Nate manages to escape the water at the last second. But Fraser is still underwater and drowning, so Nate dives back in and saves her just in time. She thanks him for saving her, and they continue their journey. They reach another gate and try to use the key, but it only works if both keys are used at the same time. Sully follows the app and finds their location, trying to open a manhole to get down to them. Fraser asks him to throw them the second key. He does, and they use both keys to open the gate. They find themselves in a 2,000-year-old Roman chamber filled with massive vases. They assume the treasure is inside and start smashing them, but they only find salt, which the Romans used to trade. However, Nate finds a hand-drawn map by Captain Elcano, the man who hid the treasure, which reveals that the treasure's true location is on an island in the Philippines. Suddenly, Fraser pulls a gun and demands Nate hand over the map. He asks her why she wants to steal it, but she avoids giving a clear answer. He's forced to hand it over to avoid being shot. She tells him not to trust Sully, because he's hiding something about his brother Sam. Nate asks her what Sully's hiding, but she hits him over the head, knocks him unconscious, and walks away. After a while, Nate wakes up to find Sully standing in front of him, telling him he had a feeling that Fraser would betray them. Nate asks him about his brother Sam and says he won't continue the treasure hunt unless he knows what happened to him. Sully is forced to tell him the truth, that Braddock killed Sam. Nate gets really angry that Sully lied to him and tells him he's done with the journey and walks away. At the same time, Braddock goes to Santiago and tells him that Sully escaped and she couldn't steal the keys. Then Fraser shows up and says she got the keys, and we discover that she was actually working with Santiago the whole time. Meanwhile, Nate is packing his bag, getting ready to return to New York. Sully shows up and tries to convince him they need to keep going, to avenge his brother. Nate agrees, saying he'd already been thinking about it, and that he figured out the exact location of the treasure island. At the same time, Santiago is preparing his plane to head to the island, and one of his men loads his car into the aircraft. Fraser gives Santiago the map and tells him she figured out the exact location of the treasure island. On the other side, Nate and Sully are watching Fraser and decide to sneak onto Santiago's plane so they can travel with them to the island. A little later, the flight takes off and heads straight to the treasure island. Santiago talks to Fraser and his men, telling them that his ancestors discovered the treasure 500 years ago, and that it's probably not on the island itself, but was hidden somewhere to keep it safe from thieves. Suddenly, before he finishes his sentence, Braddock appears and kills him so she can claim the treasure for herself. Then she realizes Fraser has escaped and sends her men to hunt her down and kill her too. While she's searching for Fraser, Nate and Sully reveal themselves. They had been hiding inside Santiago's car the whole time. They enter the room where Santiago was and find his dead body. Sully grabs the map, and they decide to look for parachutes and escape the plane before anyone notices them. While Nate is looking for a parachute, he spots Braddock and decides to confront her. He asks her if she really killed his brother Sam. Her men start shooting at him, and Sully jumps out of the plane. The cargo crates fall out too, and Nate tries to escape before he gets dragged out as well, but his leg gets tangled in one of the crates and he falls from the plane, bringing us back to the movie's opening scene. Meanwhile, Braddock's men have captured Fraser and are about to kill her, but she shoots them and escapes using Santiago's car, racing to jump off the plane. Suddenly, a crate falls in front of her and knocks her off balance, causing her to fall out of the plane too. Nate jumps into the car with her, and Fraser tells him to follow her. Then she jumps out of the car, and Nate follows, grabbing onto one of the crates. Fraser yells at him to pull the parachute, and they land in the ocean. Fraser apologizes for what she did, and says she was just afraid he might betray her. When they come out of the water, they realize they've landed on a Philippine island. They rent a room to rest. That night, Nate looks at pictures of his brother Sam and reads the letters he left behind, hoping to find any clue to the treasure's location. He discovers that one of the letters was written in invisible ink, which shows up under heat. Nate realizes Sam wrote that. "The keys are the compass that will lead you to the treasure." Nate takes the keys from Fraser's bag and uses them on the map. As he turns them in a specific direction, he finds the hidden location of the treasure. He decides not to tell Fraser about the real location and writes down fake coordinates to see if she'll betray him again. The next morning, Fraser wakes up, sees the paper with coordinates, and realizes Nate found the treasure. So, once again, she heads out to get it before he wakes up. A little later, Nate wakes up and realizes Fraser betrayed him again, but this time, he had tricked her instead. He heads to the real treasure site, but unfortunately, Braddock had been following him too and now is tailing him. Nate enters a cave by the sea and finds the ship where the treasure is hidden. He also finds the cruise ship belonging to the captain. He boards the treasure ship and discovers that Sully had been tracking him the whole time using a phone app. They find the treasure stored in barrels. But sadly, Braddock was watching them too. They hide on the ship and start thinking of a way to steal the treasure. Braddock's men search for them, and just when they're certain the coast is clear, a helicopter arrives and begins lifting both ships out of the cave. Sully grabs some gold and puts it in his bag. He and Nate confront Braddock's men. Then Sully sneaks onto the helicopter and shoots at it, but Braddock is already on the cruise ship and spots Sully, rushing toward him. When Nate sees Braddock coming, he fires a cannonball from the ship and hits the ship she's on. It starts to sink, but she escapes and heads for Nate, throwing the anchor onto their ship to stop Sully from flying away. Sully throws his bag of gold at Braddock, hitting her and knocking her into the sea. Nate pulls Sully up just in time. When Braddock surfaces, part of the ship falls on her and explodes, killing her instantly. Sully is upset that Captain Elcano's treasure sank to the bottom of the sea and disappeared completely. But he's surprised to find that Nate secretly kept some gold in his pocket. They decide to head back home to start a new adventure. On the other side, we discover that Nate's brother Sam is still alive, but he's in prison. He's writing letters to his brother, hoping one day to be free and see him again. This sets the stage for a possible sequel. And that's where the movie ends. If you liked the film, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel.